Good evening. Good evening. Getting some feedback there, so let us fix that quickly and be on the way. But hi, good evening. Welcome to Alternate Views. I am your host this evening, Mr. Kimar Stewart. As every Thursday at 7 p.m., we come to you live with Alternate Views, the show. As you know, we try to stay on the cutting edge as it relates to information and the sharing of information. We're getting some static in the line. Let me correct that. Everything should be fine. So just let me know if you're hearing me well, if my volume is clear, and if my volume is clear, let us get on the road this afternoon and let us discuss some alternatives. So today is May the 30th, Thursday, the end of the month. So as the month comes to an end, we thought it fit and proper to do a show this afternoon in tribute to former colleague, former friend, former mentor, Dr. Denis Lowe. As you know, Dr. Denis Lowe uh, was a minister of government in his last profession. However, we will not discussing his work this evening from that perspective, but from the perspective of a clinical psychologist, as he was a studied clinical psychologist, and we're going to focus on his work, which came in written form, and it's called The Journey, the Path to Finding True Self Meaning. It's called The Journey, the Path to Finding True Self Meaning by Dr. Denis Lowe. Hoping you can see it here. We're gonna put it on the screen. I'm gonna share my screen for you to see. It is available on Amazon. Um, if you wish to order a copy, so just let me share my screen quickly so that you may see his book, see his work. So one paperback copy is approximately $25. So it shows you here the book from Dr. Denis Lowe, clinical psychologist. This book is available on Amazon. So we're going to go into his work today from the perspective of the Barbados economy. We always do these shows and relate them back to the Barbados economy, how it functions, how it works, and to get your ideas. Now, as you know, alternative views um, is a book, of course, my book, of course. Um, and alternative views, I would work very closely with Dr. Lowe as it relates to the shaping of his book. We have the same publisher, of course. So I want to say rest in peace to Mr. Wendell Calendar, who did extensive work on Alternate Views, the book. And he also did extensive work on Dr. Lowe's book, The Journey. Mr. Calendar, we're going to do a separate day dedicated to Mr. Calendar. But Mr. Calendar's work on both of these books, along with his wife, Margot Calendar, who would have done the uh, publishing. She's still very much the publisher today of both books. Um, we want to dedicate our respects to both of that husband and wife couple of Margot Calendar and Wendell Calendar, who's now deceased. So thank you very much to both Margot and to Mr. Wendell Calendar. Now, first thing first, let me say good evening to all of the viewers. Welcome to the show. I know you usually send in your comments, so we welcome the comments. This show is going to be a little different tonight. It's not a hardcore economy that we usually do uh, with the numbers and the facts and the files and the charts and stuff. Tonight is more about self, it's more about person, and focusing on Dr. Lowe's book and understanding the role that you, as a person, as an individual, as a mother, as a father, as a son, as a daughter, as an aunt, as a grandmother, the role that you have to play uh, in development, i.e., first things personal development, which can then lead to better returns when you speak in country, because the more developed the people are, the more developed the country can be. So we're going to discuss this evening along those lines, and we really hope that you take it in good stride, as it's a show for personal and self-development. So we're going to start with a quote from Alternate Views, of course, the book. And I tend to become a bit repetitive because I want these things to stick. Right? I want these things to stick. And I always ask, what can we do for the future? What exists up there? What new economies? What new innovative ways we can use to uh, attract people to Barbados, to attract investment to Barbados, and to develop the intellectual capacities of our people. So I always argued, according from Alternate Views, that this country has the infrastructure in place to become an internationally and globally competitive beacon, but we must ask ourselves some hard questions. How equipped am I to contribute? What sacrifice I am willing to make? And what role will I play in a new Barbados? And what will I do with my newfound wealth? Not wealth as in, treasure or money that you found, like Sam Lords and those people, but wealth, intellectual wealth. And I said 2050 will be here shortly, and we cannot be found wanting when those times hit. So, as a young progressive thinker, I laid the groundwork for a new plan for Barbados, in terms of society, And the country Barbados will soar the skies of this globe as a champion and not a loser. And here is the call for all plans, all ideas, and concepts to bring our beloved country up to the standards we know we can achieve. In this day of information, we have no excuses to be languishing in the doldrums, and we have every right to rise and take our place on the world stage. So, as opposed to borrowing, unless private sources of income are injected into the local economy of Barbados, massive voids will be left to plague this country and its economy. I might understand alternative views that we need to facilitate investment into Barbados. And this evening's show will highlight to you how books like Alternate Views and books like The Journey, The Path to Finding True Self Meaning, uh, were practical pieces of work done by two Barbadians, myself and Dr. Denis Lowe. And we have to get into the books that Mr. Wendy Calendar has because he has so many books. I think he told me he had 14 books at one point in time, and he had more. So I will come on the show very soon and to get into the amount of books that Mr. Wendy Calendar wrote because we want to start a conversation in Barbados surrounding literature, surrounding the art of writing, spelling, because I find in the social media age, a lot of our people are losing the talent of writing and being able to go on to write memoirs and journals and books. That is an area of development that I'm interested in and an area of development that we can use given our high literacy levels in Barbados to facilitate using the pen as a means and ways to attract investment into Barbados. Now, I argued in alternative views that government, not any particular government, but government at large, needs to pursue new ideas, new areas of development which can provide employment and foreign exchange. And there has been some talk about diversification in many areas, diversification of the Barbados economy, but that seems to be a myth uh, because we continue to focus solely on very minute areas. And I said that government should seriously address what I am calling the orange economy. The orange economy. And the orange economy, i.e., intellectual property and the cultural arts. So for this evening's discussion, we're focusing on intellectual property, i.e., the intellectual property of Kimar Stewart in book form Alternate Views, or the intellectual property of Dr. Denis Lowe in the book called The Journey, The Path to Finding True Self Meaning, and how books like these and others that can be written and that have been written were used to attract uh, investment to Barbados. And I'm going to see how that investment was attracted through alternative views. And I'm going to see how that investment was attracted through the journey as well. Now, when alternative views was published, we entered into discussion with a university from the United States of America, and that university intended to use alternative views the book as the course text for a master's program, a master's in public policy. So alternative views led discussions with an international university in the United States surrounding adopting alternative views the book as the course text for that master's program in public policy. Now, alternative views is a book of economics. However, the understandings and the ideals and the thought process that went in to alternative views is attractive to universities abroad who want to teach their uh, students, student roles, about what is happening in Barbados. I know that at the level of master's research and doctoral research, that these professors also are required to publish papers, publish memoirs, publish books. So there exists in and itself a silo and untapped potential where our university lecturers can and should be tasked to produce literature to add to the intellectual pool of Barbados. So we had intellectual giants in the Caribbean already. We had Sir Arthur Lewis, and we have the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute. And the Sir Arthur Lewis model is still heavily used in economics and other spaces in the academic and intellectual circles. So, Sir Arthur Lewis, then we had some other laureates like CLR, James, we had persons like Walter Rodney, and these other luminaries, which also included some persons who went on to become prime ministers. So we had Forbes Burnham in Guyana, we had Errol Barrow from Barbados, and there were some other persons who would have studied abroad, mainly at like English universities, and who would have done a lot of writing and books. So I know that the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, is a serial publisher. He publishes, or he has published a couple of books by now. And I browsed through on our tournament. I used to do a lot of reading in the library at university. So I know Dr. Ralph Gonzalez uh, is a publisher, and he documents his thing. So I would like to see even persons like the former Prime Minister of Barbados, Mr. Frandon Stewart, uh, enter into the space of publishing, because any book by him would become a national attraction for Barbados, and persons wanted to hear directly from a man who has been there. I think he is probably the only person still existing in Barbados that has reached those levels and achieved the things that he's achieved. And it'd be very good to hear from him in book format about government and governance and about Barbados at large. Uh, Also, I suspect that um, I saw a book by Barack Obama as well, and I think I saw one by Michelle Obama as well. Um, and there are quite a few, not that many, and coming Caribbean now, leaders and one or two politicians who enter into publishing books. Right? Um, so that is a good. This is we are on good ground here. So in the intellectual property of Barbados, I believe an alternative views led the way because we are although it was written by a local Barbadian, alternate views was done internationally on international platforms. So if you go into the international library publication, you will see alternate views as an internationally registered book, and so is Dr. Lowe's, and so are all the other books done by persons like Wendell Calendar. It no crossed my mind that uh, Professor Dr. Justin Robertson wrote a book on one alpha speeches, and I saw that one available here. And also saw a book from Mr. Ronald Jones, who was the former Minister of Education in Barbados. He edited a book about Errol Barrow's speeches as well. I think the current leader of opposition, Ralph Thorne, would have written a book as well. I have to get the name. I saw it published on the social media of Robert Bobby Morris, who's an intellectual giant in himself. I look forward to reading a book and publication from a person like Robert Bobby Morris because he has extensive history on Barbados, um, not just family history, but political history and history of the trade unions in Barbados, and we need that type of information chronicled, as the future generations of Barbados will need to read uh, what was happening during these times, what has happened during these times, so that they can make informed decisions about a better future for themselves. Right? So as I get into Dr. Lowe's book, a lot of these nuggets and themes that I dropped over the last 20 minutes will become very clear as we start to get in and unravel Dr. Lowe's book. So without further ado, I am going to get into the journey. So join me on this journey uh, this evening as we go into Dr. Lowe's book, which is called The Journey, uh, The Path to Finding True Self Meaning. So I'm going to share my screen with you once more to show you his book, The Journey. This is the cover of that book. You can see it right here. This is his book, and I'm just going to read what is there. It says that this book represents a compilation of leading edge ideals, and concepts on the journey to discovering the true meaning of authentic selfhood. It seeks to probe many of the psychological, psychosocial, physical, and spiritual issues that often impact how we see ourselves and how we define and defend our life journey. It looks deep into issues of family, peers, and other relationships that influence the way we see ourselves and how these forces either help or hurt us along the journey of life. This book, or the book, takes a very candid look at how we often get trapped, trying to live according to the script of others, while sometimes never freeing ourselves from the mental and psycho-emotional bondage imposed on our self-system. In these circumstances, we drag through life carrying the baggage of others as well as our past, never finding the freedom to define our authentic self or discover our true purpose in life. The journey is about the quest to finding that true sense of who you are while stripping off the masks that are used to conceal insecurities and uncertainties, anger, hurt, fears, and persistent frustration that hinders us from evolving into fully functioning human beings. And this book takes you on a journey of true self discovery and offers prescriptions on how to take charge of your life. It is a must read and it will change your life. Blessings, Dr. Denis Lowe, clinical psychologist. And that is basically what was the interlude to Dr. Lowe's book. Uh, so you can see we're going to focus solely on three themes tonight because it's a very long book. So we have to do it in two shows. So we're going to just touch on three themes out of Dr. Lowe's book tonight and show you how uh, intellectual property like this one that could help to attract investment to Barbados and to create employment and to further develop the creative economy of this country. So the foreword of the book says that the true search for true self, or the search for true self, as presented by Dr. Lowe in this book, represents a deep, thoughtful, passionate, and contribution, erudite, to the topic of personal development. This book is engaging and I found myself having to reflect on the many ideas introduced here. And for those who wish to live a life of purpose and one in which they would be well pleased in the evening of their days, this book is compulsory reading. The merging of academic, professional, and spiritual strands in this mind boggling production is totally refreshing and merits every minute spent pouring through it. And the reinforcement of admonitions to disregard those who might want to discourage you from a wholesome journey of life is very important in a world characterized by more negative values than positive. Right? Sounds interesting. The journey presented here, while reflecting many of the author's personal experiences, is one with which one interested in the pursuit of excellence and self-actualization. Remember Maslow hierarchy of needs? I recommend the journey as compulsory reading for persons of all ages and walks of life. And this foreword was written by Wendell Callender, Justice of the Peace. Uh, May the Lord rest his soul, who was an educator, trainer, and the author of many other books. Hey, and we're gonna have those books on here very soon. So let's dive in to the first theme that we're gonna focus on Dr. Lowe's book. So let's gather the page here. The first theme is that of the role of our religious beliefs and religious practices. And Dr. Lowe starts that chapter of the book at page 78. And Dr. Lowe is saying here that as we carefully examine the script that guides the way we choose to live our lives, we must probe the impact of our religious beliefs on this entire process. Clearly, religion has a dominant influence in the lives of many of us. It is a fact of life that the notions and convictions which drive our religious practices are often deeply embedded in our psyche and help to shape our ideals about ourselves and about others. One of its central functions is to point us towards a higher power while guiding our lifestyle practices. It is important to offer a distinction between religion and spirituality. Simply defined, religion, the root from which sprouts religious beliefs and practices, is a set of beliefs about a supernatural power that is held responsible for the creation and control of the universe, the way we live, and our final destination. Our religion is driven by sects or groups of believers, rituals, observances, and theological postulations on good and evil, right and wrong, and moral and social and civic responsibility. So religion can be driven by legalistic pressures and expectations. So what you wear, what you eat, what you drink, and how you practice the simple routines of life and living, which can plunge individuals into much inner confusion that often result in a deep psychological and spiritual wounding. That is the first part of the quote from Dr. Lowe. And it's a very interesting quote. So let us put it into perspective. Barbados, as you know, Barbados is a predominantly Christian country, and mostly, or there are more, or exists mainly in Barbados space are Anglican churches. Or the Anglican Church was a historical church that dominated Barbados. Throughout the years, we had the emergence of new churches. You have the spiritual Baptist, you have the Adventist church, you have the Catholic church, and many denominations. We now have the Muslim community, we have the Syrian community, is Indian community at large existing in Barbados. We have an emergence of uh, African or the African uh, culture in Barbados. which was always here in the Caribbean, I should say. The African belief systems always exist in Barbados, but you have multicultural societies or multicultural in society or multicultural society in Barbados. However, predominantly Christianity dominates the narrative in Barbados. So when we're looking at religious beliefs in terms of planning and governmental planning, there has to be a level of inclusion of Christian values into the planning of the country because the base of the country is predominantly Christian. So therefore, if you create laws, be economic laws or legalistic laws, if that, and that is a term, when you create these type of laws, there has to be some correlation to the religious or belief system of the country. So in the Eastern world, the Arab world, they practice Muslim or what should they call it? Muslim or Islam? Sorry, Islam, the practice of Islam. And there are certain cultural norms which exist in those parts of the world which would not necessarily fit the culture of Barbados. So, one simple example would be that of the hijab. We had a situation where a Muslim lady entered into a government office in Barbados and she wanted to take a picture. And she was asked to remove the hijab for the photo. However, her religious belief would prohibit her from removing that hijab. But the laws of the country say that you have to take the picture without the hijab. But her religious beliefs allow her to wear that hijab. So where do you then give way in terms of governmental planning and governmental policy? Yeah. So that is why I made the point that the laws of the country has to have some correlation and connection back to the religious belief of the country and the majority, not that's not a religion, but the majority of the country. So Barbados is a Christian country, and we traditionally have or are supposed to have. If you check the law books of Barbados, and if you check the national anthem, and if you check, I think you always hear a reference to God. In national, I said, the Lord has been the people's guide for the past 300 years, right? And we had some changes in the schools of Barbados where they sought to remove prayers and worship from the school scenario. And the schools in Barbados do Christian prayers, Christian worship, and the schools are trying to change that to mindfulness or mindfulness sessions. So it's gone from a prayer session to a mindfulness session. So what I will use, no, I don't know if this is a word, but they're trying to de-Christianize or attempting to de-Christianize uh, laws of the country to make it more diverse in using their language. So in diversity, we are now recognizing that there are other belief systems in the country um, who are at the table. They have the economic wealth, they have the networks, the connections, um, and they are at the table. They do not necessarily share the religious system that the majority of the population will share, but they do have a say at the table. Right? So, what is the government to do in terms of governmental planning, governmental policy? How are they to proceed? Um, so, these are questions that need to be answered when you're changing the cultures of a country, because as you can see, it comes right back down to the individual self. What does the individual believe? What religious system um, an individual believes? How structured and popular that religious system is in the country, And if the people of the country uphold those values, then you're going to get a clash between what the government wants and what the population sees as morally right to do. Right? So, an example of that could be the fact where we had a government minister who received in Barbados who received a $7,500 check, and the person or the politician in receipt of that check is saying that they did nothing wrong. Although the laws of the country say that they did something wrong and that they received an advantage. So, because as the 1929 Prevention of Corruption Act of Barbados, and I think it was the new modern prevention of corruption legislation, speaks to ministers or government ministers taking an advantage. So, it becomes a moral issue where a government minister receives a $7,500 check from a company that has been getting government contracts from the ministry that that government minister heads. So you see the conflict of interest. So you may not have done anything wrong in your eyes, but it becomes a moral issue uh, where persons are saying that you're taking an advantage because if that company benefits from government contracts, and that company is giving a particular minister in their personal name uh, a check, we can say that that can be considered a kickback, that can be considered a bribe, and it is considered an advantage. And when you receive an advantage, that is contrary to the law of Barbados. However, the responses articulated by the particular minister and the government would say it took it from being a legal issue to that of being a moral issue because you took it for a good cause, according to what the minister said. You took it for giving out hampers, as was said by the particular minister. So you received an advantage, or you received a bribe, or you received a kickback to be able to support constituents in the form of hampers and other necessities that you saw fit to give up with the money that was collected from the contractor who was benefiting from government contracts. So, do you see the issue of religious beliefs and the belief systems of a country, and where a country believes one thing based off their religious practices, but government ministers may have uh, or practice different systems, I should say. So, the point by Dr. Lowe that the role of our religious beliefs and practices that they should guide the way we choose to live our lives and the impact that these beliefs would have on our entire process, and that the Christian religion has a dominant influence in the lives of many Barbadians, then any government has to plan in and around that fact. Right? So when you have the emergence of new multicultures, then you also have to plan around that fact because you cannot practice exclusion. Like, you cannot practice exclusion. So, what type of religious beliefs do the members of Parliament of Barbados have? Do the religious beliefs of the members of Parliament, does it help or does it hinder the application of policy and politics in Barbados? In your opinion, would the religious upbringing of the members of Parliament if you put that under the microscope, um, is it helping or is it hindering the government in making the right choices for the country and for the people who live in the country? Right? So Dr. Lowe's point here is a very important point. And he says here also that the religion can also be driven by legalistic pressures and expectations of what you wear, what you eat, what you drink, and how you practice the simple routines of life and living, which can plunge individuals into much inner confusion that often result in deep psychological and spiritual woundings. So if a person who lives in a country who participates in the economy, he still has to buy clothing. So depending on how well the country is doing financially, depending on how high the rates of taxation are, depends on the level of discretionary income a person may have or businesses may have, revenue, profits, whatever. It determines what a person can wear. It also determines what you drink, and it also determines how you practice and the routines you develop as an individual based off the level of income. Right? So, for many persons who may go to church and who may have deep religious beliefs, when you earn your money, if you are indeed a practitioner of uh, Christian values, your money should be spent according to the Bible and according to the Word of God. It should be spent according. So, as a Christian, we are assuming here, we're making assumptions now. As a Christian, I would assume that some percentage of your money should go towards tithes of the church. Some percentage uh, should go towards wearing modest clothing. Uh, some percentage should go towards eating certain foods, as the Bible do speak to what foods you should and should not eating as a practicing Christian. It also speaks to what you drink. So Christians should not be ban alcohol. However, alcohol continues to sell. Um, so you get the point here that your religious beliefs should, I mean, again, this is an assumption, your religious beliefs should give you an indicator, or a country's religious belief should give you an indicator as to how certain sets of your income or the certain directions that your income should be spent in. So as a government, you plan for that. Again, but that's an assumption. That's not a stated fact. An assumption. So you're assuming that based on the fact that Barbados is a Christian society, that your income should be going in certain directions. But we recognize that that's often not the case. Right? We recognize that that's often not the case. Right? So economics, religion, historically, the churches are the ones who drove majority of the economic activity. Um, as you know, many churches had schools nearby, and in the earlier times, a lot of Barbadians went to primary school or secondary school, and they went to the church very nearby. It was a hand-in-hand process. Right? So in other religions, where let's use the Islamic religion, and again going back to that of the hijab, let us assume that all or majority of the women in the Islamic parts of the world wear their hijab, then there should be no reason why makeup sales are in the billions in those parts of the world if women uh, practice their religion and wear the hijab as required by the book. Like, that's an assumption. However, you can see that makeup sales, can't get the exact figure, but makeup sales are significant enough in those parts of the world still, although you have the Islamic religion as a predominant system in the country. Right? So when you're looking at how religious beliefs and how religious behaviors will drive uh, economic activity, there's no one size fits all recommendation. Right? But governments still have to plan for it. So I guess some people would ask the question, no, would a less moral or a less religious or more atheist society uh, be easier to plan for economically? Why is it, or why does it seem like governments around the world are moving to a less godly, more atheist type style of governance? Um, I can't necessarily give you a real time answer. Maybe we should get some spiritual leaders or a spiritual uh, leader who's high up in the realms uh, to articulate an answer for that. Now, before I move on to the other element, because we spoke in this quote about religion and spirituality, I just wanted to give one more example. The death penalty in the country. Um, the religious beliefs of a country would determine how easily accepted the death penalty is in the country. So obviously there will be certain crimes that will be listed that can attract the death penalty. But if the religious belief of the country speaks against the death penalty, then there will be some level of disagreement. If the government is indeed impacted by the church, there will be a disagreement as to how you proceed. Now, we're not negating the fact of the United Nations and the other international treaties that we would have signed on to outlawing that. We're not speaking about that. So that point, although important, is irrelevant. Becoming relevant now. We're simply speaking about the religious beliefs of a country and that of the death penalty. So in uh, other parts of the world, there are religious beliefs that allow very easily for the death penalty. It allows easily for castration as a punishment to breaking the law or whatever way if engaged in theft and other acts. There are some countries in the world who still prescribe the death penalty. So, so that is also a very relevant point to consider. Now, spirituality, according to Dr. Denis Lowe. He says that spirituality, on the other hand, can be defined as a process involving a purposeful search and discovery of that higher spiritual power source responsible for the creation, preservation, inspiration, and consummation of life and contented living. It is an authentic experience that cannot be engineered by another, one that must be pursued, discovered, and practiced by the individual self. Spirituality is not driven by symbolisms and ritualistic form, but rather by a simple encounter with that higher spiritual power source that feeds the hunger and quenches the thirst of the soul. And the object of one spirituality may differ from that of another in much the same way as one religious's interest may differ from the other. For some time, the Messiah is the center of their religion and our spirituality, while for others, the object of their religion and spiritual significance may include a mortal, a saint, or some other entity. But whatever our point of focus may be, each individual has the right to pursue their spirituality with great compassion and conviction. Right? So that makes the point that I am going to make here. And that the assumption that because a country is predominantly Christian, that you can plan for it from that perspective solely and purely is a very flawed determination, because each individual now has his own element of spirituality to embark on, and they have their own level of spirituality to achieve, and man grows at different levels of consciousness, etc., etc. So therefore, persons uh, dedicate themselves to religion. You have some people who go to church, pay the tithes. You have some people who may believe in God. They go to church maybe sparingly, um, but they do take in religious messaging. Then you have people who are very spiritual, but they don't go to church at all. Right? So then, how do you, as a government, um, join with the church, who is supposed to be the predominantly large religion? How do you plan properly to ensure that society has its needs met, that the people are fed, that that you know? So every man, every woman, as was said here, has his or her own journey to walk, right? And as was said by Dr. Lowe, that for some, the Most High, which is the God or Christian God of Barbados, is the center of the religious element of Barbados. Right? However, there are some people whose Most High might be that of a mortal or a man or a saint or some other entity. So they do not have the same moral compass as others. Right? So with the emergence of these new types of moral compasses, then you have foreign behaviors that being imported into the economy, foreign behaviors imported in the country, and it is more difficult for a government to plan its spending and to plan its taxation policy. So, for example, um, in Islamic financing, there's something called uh, in Islamic financing, you don't have interest. They don't charge interest. You do like mezzanine financing, but they don't do interest. So when you go to the bank and they're charging you interest, or you go to somebody to give you and they charge you interest, in Islamic financing, interest does not exist. But interest exists in Barbados, interest exists in this part of the world. So when it comes to governmental planning, the government, and again referencing religious belief, if the government had to follow the philosophy of the Islamic nation, uh, they can say, well, we adopt this Islamic philosophy of no interest, and therefore we declare a e-government policy tomorrow that is no longer uh, interest on any loans borrowed from institutions which practice this model of Islamic financing. So you see how a religious belief can feed into economic policy of a country. So could this is not a promotion, by the way, it's just a question. So could Islamic financing potentially benefit you? How would you survive? How would you plan individually, financially, economically, socially, and otherwise? Uh, if your country had to adopt a policy of there will no longer be any interest on loans borrowed for anything, right? That is utopia. That's just a hypothetical situation. Again, that is not a promotion. On the other hand, Christian planning allows for uh, we have interest, not even Christian plan. We have interest generally in Barbados and in majority of countries that have predominantly Christian beliefs. Right, interest exists, and I think interest exists also in the book. So there's you see there's the comparison of religious beliefs, how both religious beliefs trickle down into governmental planning, and how a country that's run on Christian values could be different from a country run on Islamic values, could be different from a country run on atheist values, could be a country run on Buddhist values, right? So that's giving you the many different observations there. But I'm having a very good show so far, so I just want to tell you good night, and welcome to Alternate Views. We're 56 minutes in. Don't forget to like and to share Alternate Views. Let's not forget that we have a new logo. We have a new logo, and I want to show you that logo again. So I'm just going to put it up on the screen. Yes, so there you go, Alternate Views logo. This is our new artwork, and this logo will be representative of Alternate Views going forward. You see that it is the same color of the book. So don't forget to like. Don't forget to share Alternate Views. Uh, this show is very important to me this evening because it is a tribute to Dr. Denis Lowe, and we're going through his book, The Journey, um, The Path to Finding True Self Meaning. So again, welcome to Alternate Views. This evening's platform and all of our platforms are endorsed by the Caribbean Progress Studies Institute. So we want to say good evening to all of the members and other academic fellows who are tuning in this evening to Alternate Views. The Caribbean Progress Studies Institute is one that is offering cutting edge information as well as it relates to new ideas. We had the executive director of the Caribbean Progress Studies Institute on the program already. His name is Rashid Griffith, so you may want to go back and watch that show. Me and Mr. Griffith had some very robust discussion on some new radical economic ideas, and we will have him back on, and we'll have some other persons from the Caribbean Progress Studies Institute coming on to Alternate Views. But thank you very much. As you see, we just removed the logo. So Alternate Views is indeed on the up and up. As my former school, which is the St. Michael School, as we always say, nothing without help from God. So we just wish to give thanks for that. No, I want to focus on the youth. Hey, it's still on religious beliefs, but I want to focus on the youth. And Dr. Lowe is saying that since we are not born with religious beliefs, and it is understood that the practices associated with religion are not instinctive, it means that they are handed down to us by adults who themselves are sometimes unsure of why they believe what they do. And we come along seeing our parents and other adults sharing and practicing religion, and we often find ourselves adopting the same practices. Of course, some of us make significant contact with religion during our young and middle adult years. In such cases, this contact is seen as strictly voluntary, and its impact is noted as invited rather than imposed. At this stage of our lives, we find ourselves exercising our right to believe and practice whatever we choose. often forgetting to carefully measure the consequences, negative or positive, of our choices. We must always remember that making decisions on our choices of religious beliefs and practices are very critical to our wellness and should not be taken lightly. Very profound quote by Dr. Denis Lowe, a very wise man. And that allows me now to focus on the youth and say that in a Christian society, Barbados, uh, we hear the opposition leader of Barbados often referring to moral decay of government and about the decline in values and standards of government and use of negative elements and forces to drive governmental decisions, malice and ill will. Um, you often hear we had the child protection bill being passed in Barbados recently, and there was a lot of talk surrounding the protection of children in Barbados. So, what is the impact of religious beliefs on the schools, and how then the imposition or the invitation, sorry, of religious values into the schools, how then would that contribute to economic planning for when these young people get into the young adult years to become a taxpayer of Barbados? A working, employed, or self-employed taxpayer of Barbados, right? So in the schools, uh, what is the exposure of the youth to religious beliefs and practices? Are religious beliefs and practices? One second, please. Yes. Sorry about that. We had some noise going on in the back. Uh, as I was saying, what is the exposure of the youth to religious beliefs, and will those religious beliefs that are being proposed to be taught in the schools, how do they contribute to long-term economic planning of a country? Right. So I hope you're seeing where I'm going with this based of Dr. Lowe's interjection. Right. So we have, and I heard an article, I heard someone speaking this week, a reverend or so, and he was saying that more and more Barbadians are becoming atheists, which means that people are losing their religious beliefs. So, as was interjected by Dr. Lowe, he says that since we are not born with religious beliefs, it is understood that these practices associated with religion are not instinctive. It means that they are handed down to us by adults, right? So the adults of the country are the ones who personify religious beliefs, and these religious beliefs are set to be passed down to the younger generation. And if we use the schools, uh, and I gave some examples earlier of prayer being removed from schools. There's usually full assembly and prayers being offered. Um, Prayers are now being changed to mindfulness sessions. Um, God is being taken out of the national anthem of Barbados, and in the legislation of Barbados, or the Charter of Barbados, the Republican Charter, they are suggesting that we change the word from God to that of the Creator. Right? So there seems to be a push to bring more diversity and more inclusion of other beliefs as opposed to giving the Christian belief system preeminence or over any other um, religious belief. And there's a I would say a more inclusive and usually more inclusive approach of other religious beliefs in Barbados. So what does that do to the culture? How does that impact? How does that impact on future planning of the country? Have governments traditionally planned for a country that is predominantly Christian based, but the young people of the country are not necessarily co-signing to the traditional belief of the country, then you're going to get the emergence of new cultural dynamics. Right? So as opposed to Christian behaviors, you're getting an emergence of new cultures which are not underpinned by the traditional religious beliefs that the adults of Barbados had. Right? So very often I hear leaders, I hear seniors crying down the young people, right? About the young people are not as they used to be. That the young people are into it parties and bash. They cry them down a lot, and unjustifiably so. Right? So they cry down the youth of the country because the youth of the country are not necessarily uh, being good sports as it relates to the reset or the receiving of the traditional belief system of Barbados, and therefore we are getting some foreign behaviors and foreign elements, the emergence of gun violence and other heinous crimes, theft and other crimes that were foreign to our culture. We are now seeing an emergence in it. The there has been a moving away from that underpinning that we've spoken about in the country, and I highlighted it due to the way how the schools and how we're moving out those underpinnings from out of the schools. So therefore, persons are growing up with less religious belief systems, and therefore susceptible to take on other ideologies. Therefore, liable to worship uh, other men like man, and institutions and stuff are not necessarily uh, the Lord above God and Christendom. Um, in the Muslim cultures around the world, we're seeing a relaxation of some of the values as well, and therefore, in years to come, these trends will have some repercussions. They could be both positive and negative. We're not here to go that line in terms of I think we're just discussing the occurrences of the new trends in Barbados. So we're off that point now of religious beliefs. We're gonna move on. We spent a lot of time there. Um, so thank you guys for tuning in. Um, the numbers are climbing. And again, this is a tribute to Dr. Denis Lowe and his book. And we're discussing some of his we're discussing some of his psychological, psychosocial, and physical and spiritual issues, um, belief systems, and how they impact on the planning of an economy. So, Dr. Denis Lowe, he wrote a chapter 6. I love this book, by the way. Um, these type of intellectual exercises, I think we need more of these. We need more writers, we need more authors, because I find that Barbadians are losing their like for reading, and there's always a saying used to degrade and disrespect uh, the black race. And people often say that if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in the book. So let us reverse that trend and that curse onto a more positive trend, and let us get back our like for reading. And I hope that by now you're garnering how becoming an author could help to contribute to the Barbados economy, not only financially but psychologically and otherwise, as was practiced by Dr. Denis Lowe. So, chapter 6 of The Journey, The Path to Find True Self Meaning, says that I want to begin this chapter with an interesting poem he came across recently, and it was written by Charles C. Finn. And I'm going to just read the first paragraph of that poem, and it says, "Don't be fooled by me. Don't be fooled by the face." Let me start over, sorry. The name of the poem is "Please Hear What I Am Not Saying." Don't be fooled by me. Don't be fooled by the face I wear. For I wear a mask, a thousand masks, masks that I am afraid to take off, and none of them is me. Now you can tell me who this sounds like now. Pretending is an art that is second nature. Don't be fooled. For God's sake, don't be fooled. It gives you an impression that you're secure, that all is sunny and unruffled, within as well without. That confidence is my name, and that coolness is the game. But I don't want to get into the poems. Poems is another day. Poems is another day. So you don't really want to think about the gist of it, though, is to say that the story tells of so many of us, people who exist, who see ourselves as taxpayers, who pay late bill, who pay water bills, who pay school fees, who pay car insurance, who pay home insurance, who pay gas tax, sewage tax. We often find ourselves trapped beneath the mask that we create to conceal the true nature, or the true state, sorry, of our existence. And it captures the cries of many who find endless difficulties in living out the creeds of their true self state. It highlights how we can become so driven by self doubt, fear, and other negative life features that we entice ourselves into retreating behind one or sometimes several false identities that we've created for ourselves. To be masked is like living in the shadows of darkness, stumbling along, pretending that you are who you are not. It is an attempt to be identified, recognized, and treated as someone who really does not exist but wants so desperately to belong. But can someone who chooses to conceal their true self identity ever truly belong? If the person who's being embraced is not the real person, then the acceptance is only based on what the mask represents, i.e., social status, personal style, physical assets, etc., and not on who is behind the mask. What you see isn't always what you get, and too many of us are masked. We know it, and we tend to think that nobody else knows. However, the latter is not usually the case. Sooner or later, we discover that we have been discovered. So the question becomes, why do we ever try to mask who we really are? There are varying reasons why people wear masks. In the first place, some wear masks because of chronic self doubt. Some are just not comfortable with who we are. We just don't like ourselves very much, and we don't believe that others will like us the way we are. Perhaps we have been made to feel inadequate by those who we trusted for love and nurturance, and they have let us down. Or worse yet, we have repeatedly told ourselves that we are just not good enough, and therefore we now believe our own negative prophecies. No, Dennis Lowe sounds like a pastor. Dennis Lowe sounds like the Reverend. And Dennis Lowe sounds like the psychologist that should have been speaking to many of our people, and we can focus on our people from the perspective of the workplace. People who often come to work buried in self doubt, people who often come to work buried with feelings of inadequacy, people who often can work under the stress of the household, and people who often live in chronic misery. So we have people who are in the workplace living in chronic misery, uh, believing that their wages are inadequate, uh, believing that the high prices in the supermarket, they can't afford to live, meaning that they have to push themselves to do overtime, and other persons who may be weak may feel that they have to engage in theft and other nefarious activities to be able to suffice their pay packs, because it may not be adequate and they may do something morally wrong to gain extra income. And the stress of working adults in Barbados and in economies, small economies, large economies, doesn't matter what type of economy, but the stress of people who have to get up every day and come and work is also a factor that those persons who are planning economic policy have to consider. Because if you don't have workers, then the work can't be done. Right? So you need people in the workplace who are not uh, overly stressed to the point that it impacts output and the economic output of work. Like, that is just taxpaying adults now who go to work. And we're going to come back to them. But we're going to move on to the children and the youth and the young people of Barbados who are battling with issues of self-esteem and now trying to self-realize who they are, trying to find footings, trying to determine uh, what career they want in life. Right? Young people are often pressured by parents to take on professions that they necessarily don't have an interest or are passionate in, and therefore they are confused by who they are because their parents are telling them one thing and they believe something else. So I've seen young children grow up to become young adults, people who were forced to study law and study medicine, but had a natural eye for art, had a natural talent with dancing, acting, but they were discouraged by parents and other peers, peer pressure in a negative way, that why don't you go and look for a proper means and ways to get income, as something to fall back on. And people kill their hopes and they kill their dreams and take on identities of other persons prescribed by other persons, and therefore find themselves in high levels of misery, becoming unproductive citizens, some falling out of the world of work and the labor force, some going on to become socially awkward, and find themselves on the wrong side of the law. You have high rates of suicide and other issues that are associated with taking on identities that are not are who you are, but that which were prescribed by the wider society. Right? So you see how important the work of Dr. Denis Lowe is from a psychological perspective in understanding the new behavioral trends in economic planning. Right? Where persons like Dr. Lowe, who are psychologists, can help people on an individual level by offering therapy and other uh, tools to help people on an individual level. If we help persons on an individual level to develop self, then it leads to a collective betterment of society. I find that we have gotten to the point where we practice collective responsibility, not recognizing the diversity of this place. And many people in Barbados are left out of the economic pie, the social pie, uh, because we go for what is the collective, what the thing, and we don't often focus on what people needs, not wants, need, right? But I must also put some onus at the feet of people because self-development is very important. We don't wait on government. We don't wait on governments. We don't wait on party. We don't wait on parties, right? Political parties are there to facilitate what the people want, not the other way around. Parties don't facilitate, people don't facilitate what the political parties want. The parties are supposed to facilitate what the people want. But the people have to have a plan, the people have to have an agenda. But it starts with self development. So, the man who has no skill, so for example, and you come and say, what job do you want to do to help contribute to your country? The man who has no skill has very little earning potential. The man who has no skill has very little earning potential. But the man who has a skill or skills has unlimited earning potential. Because when scenarios like COVID hit and you saw how the unemployment levels went up, you saw how severance payments had to go, you saw how unemployment benefits had to come out, the Islamic community of Barbados showed its resilience during COVID, and they were not impacted by layoffs and severance payments like how majority of the population were. In fact, the Islamic community were giving out hampers and social assistance to the population. So the man who has no skill, right? It's good to have a job. It's great to have a job. A job can give you some income. But if you don't have qualifications and if you don't have certain prerequisites, you're not going to get a high income job in Barbados. Simple fact. You're not going to get a high income job in Barbados. One, if you don't have the qualifications, or if you don't have a highly, highly, highly sought after skill. And we also know things go by favor as well too. But notwithstanding. So to get a high paying job, you need qualifications in Barbados. And even when you do go have the qualifications in Barbados, The workplaces in Barbados do tend to say that they can't afford to pay you. So then that contributes to more psychological issues and the stress of having degrees up to the PhD levels and can't find a job, can't find work in Barbados, or can't find work that is going to pay you properly also leads to societal degradation. Right? So on one hand, it's good to go and get qualifications and education if you want to. On the other hand, it's important to get a skill, right? As far back as mankind existed, men were skilled. Men with skills were always in high demand. Men with skills are always the first to be called. So the man who can fix telephones, whenever the telephones drop down, he is called. The man who can fix cables, whenever cables break down, he's called. The man who can fix the internet, whenever the internet breaks down, he's called. Not the man who's using the internet, because the man who's using it don't necessarily know the first thing about internet. We just using it. So who do you want to be? The man who's paying and using the internet, or the man who can fix the internet? See, different perspective. See, an alternate view. Okay. So that is why I'm here, to give you different perspectives on how we perceive life, how we practice life, and how our everyday practices can lead to greater uh, economic growth for Barbados, if we at an individual level find the correct conduit to express what it is that we have hidden internally. Right. So the man with the skill, and I keep repeating it, the man with the skill has unlimited earning potential. Men with skills traditionally got the best women from society as well. So you can reference that even in the times of war. You know, the men who would go to war, these men, the men who take risks, and people who take risks are the ones who are rewarded. I know in portfolio management, investment management, they say there's a term in economics and finance which says that the greater the risk, the greater the return. Right? So life is twofold. To win big, you gotta bet big. You can't bet small and win big. The probability just won't exist. So the fear of losing will hamper you from winning and achieving. Right? So to win, you must take a risk, but you must also recognize that you can win and you can lose. Ain't no gray area in between. You either win or you lose, or you learn. Right? So moving on, because we're at least 1 hour and 28 minutes in, and I having this discussion because it is focused directly on you as an individual. It's focused directly on you as a person who may be seeking answers. And Dr. Denis Lowe and his book is providing some answers for me. And I'm providing my analytics to you on the mental and psycho-emotional bondage and circumstances which were passed down to us generation through generation, bad behaviors that we would have adopted, but we practice them because they are culture, and these things that help to keep us down as a people. Right? I want to repeat this. Trying to escape the inner feelings of self-doubt, worthlessness, and isolation that is often an ongoing experience for individuals. It takes a lot of personal development. Right? It takes a lot of personal development because those beliefs can hamper your earning potential in life. Those beliefs will determine how you spend your money. Those beliefs will determine how you invest your money. And those beliefs will determine how much return on investment you can potentially earn in life. Right? So that is Dr. Denis Lowe. So we are at 1 hour and 30 minutes. Hey, alternate viewers, alternate viewers. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and share this show. Right? This show, Alternate Views, is a tribute to Dr. Denis Lowe, and I'm hoping you're enjoying the analytics of Dr. Lowe's book and seeing how the intellectual property of brilliant, smart, wise Barbadians, knowledgeable, educated Barbadians can aid to develop our society in a way that we become more aware of our spending habits. We become more aware of the fact that we are giving away our wealth to persons. But I often challenge the wider populace to develop an alternate view and do not continue to follow the narrative. I often we say the white man holding us down, or the Indian man is holding us down, and the Baku man and the voodoo man and Satan himself is holding us down. But I'm here to say that there are other groups out there putting their religious beliefs to work in practice and are gaining significant sums of wealth right here in Barbados. So the example is there for us to follow as to how we can improve our fortunes as a country. Right? And the opportunity exists through the IMF program, where the government is intended to privatize many of the state-owned enterprises. So Barbadians who need to have a different understanding of self need to see themselves as investors and shareholders, as opposed to only focusing on a government job, public service job, job at school meals, job at sanitation, job as a probably those are highly paid people, but you get the gist. Okay, low level government work. All of these jobs are going to disappear now, because digitization are going to take away most of these jobs. Hey. So as opposed to only focusing on just getting a government job in a government office, we need to look at teaching our people how to invest money, teaching our people like how we sit and observe other groups in Barbados who 30, 40 years ago, they have the assets that they were able to have nowadays. People come to Barbados almost as paupers and develop themselves into mega millionaires. So Barbados has significant spending power, as Barbados is regarded in my books as a consumer's economy. Right? So our understanding of yourself now as a country to understand how your economy works as a country. Right? This is a consumer's economy. So this type of economy suits an entrepreneur who has excess production. And when I say excess production, the man who could produce 1,000 bottles of perfume could get them sold. And Barbadians buy. We buy. Barbadians spend and spend and spend a lot. So the spending power of Barbadians is significant. But the people need to have an alternate understanding of self, an alternate understanding of their wage, an alternate understanding of what is investment, an alternate understanding of what is dead money versus living money, and it simply says that if I buy $100 in stocks and bonds, that is earning potential for me for the future. If I buy $100 in beers, well, no return on investment. That's unless I sell them back individually at another place. But I mean to drink, no return on investment. So our people need to be recultured. And the example is very close for them to see. Right? And the example was made, I made it earlier when it came to the unemployment lines of COVID. Who were in the unemployment lines? Who was getting severance? Right? So you see the difference? So I hope you're grasping the wisdom of the message that I'm trying to put forward here as it relates to Barbados and its economic fortunes through the eyes of clinical psychologist Dr. Denis Lowe. So we're ending up at 1 hour and 37 minutes, the 30th of May, 2024. My name is Kimar Stewart, your host this evening of Alternate Views. And we're discussing The Journey by Dr. Denis Lowe, The Path to Finding True Self-Meaning. And so far, I'm enjoying meshing psychology and economics and society together and offering you an alternate view. I certainly am enjoying myself. I hope you are enjoying this conversation. I hope you're learning. You very much put your comments in the chat, do your feedback. Let us knock ideas off each other. But this is what it's all about. As you notice, we're taking a different route. Today we are dealing with the individual self and people, families. How do you perceive your family to be in your life? The role that family could play in developing economic activity. I remember there was something called the David Thompson Families First program. Right? I want to say a family, I'm speaking about the nuclear family. Man, woman, boy, girl. Right? The nuclear family. I'll say it again. Man, woman, boy, girl. It could also be the extended family, grandmother, grandfather. But I'm speaking about the nuclear family. Right? That's for the avoidance of doubt. So, moving on to the last theme of this evening from The Journey, Alternate Views. And I will quote here from page 282 of The Journey from Dr. Denis Lowe. It says, facing the realities of the past. So to develop and to move forward on an individual basis, to develop and move forward as a group, to develop and move forward as an organization, to develop and move forward as a community, to develop, move forward as a country. Dr. Denis Lowe is saying that we need to face the realities of the past. Like, we often run from the past. So to develop Barbados, we need to focus on some of the realities of our past. And Dr. Lowe is saying, I grew up hearing the older folk talk about skeletons in the closet and how they can haunt you for a lifetime. What I have figured out about all this is that these skeletons represent the dark experiences and secrets that are held as sacred and scary mementos of the past. They are often seen as voices that hold us bondage and hinder us from putting the past behind while reaching forth for the new possibilities of the future. Any such haunting symbol of the past are sustained by the fear of failing to confront them head on. This fear is driven by the choice to deny the reality of the present and the power of the past, taking over the will and purpose to face these realities and work towards getting beyond them. Fear of the past can be a most retarding voice and one that lures us into a state of false comfort. It can have such a paralyzing effect that induces a emotional state of being. Any failure to deal with the ghosts of the past will serve only to reinforce the toxic notions of comfort that characterize the lives of those who choose to live in the past. Facing the past means that a concerted effort to deal with all the hurtful memories that keep us angry and bitter is undertaken. And further, it is about taking on those life issues that cause most anxiety and uncertainty and choosing to be stronger and wiser than the voices that encourage living in the past. Taking this journey can be at times a rather tearful, painful, and uncertain endeavor, but these less than jubilant emotional experiences usually turn out to be a much lesser price to pay than the choice to be held hostage by the past. More and more truth, more and more wisdom by Dr. Denis Lowe. And the issue of the past, Barbados has to deal with it, right? So, you know that Barbados was a country, a colonial country. We were given independence in 1966. We continue to be an independent country from England. And we did things in a way. I often hear the elders and the seniors speaking about bringing back the good old days. I'm here to offer you an alternate view. The good old days are never coming back. But we can have a better future, a better set of days for the future. We can have a better future. But there's no such thing as bringing the past back. We have to let go of some of the old adages and the old way of doing business as a country. We have to let go of the old philosophies which we held onto as a country that worked for us. Right? Before December of 2022, Barbados was an independent country. I mean, both political parties in Barbados, the Barbados Labour Party, the Democratic Labour Party, Both of them spoke long of taking Barbados to a republic. This was a conversation going on since the Owen Arthur, Prime Minister Owen Arthur time. He was Prime Minister since 1994. I was born in 1994. Right? And we had the Henry Ford Commission on the Republic that was prepared in the 90s. And since then, both administrations were speaking about going to a republic. So, what does all of that mean? The future of Barbados is based on a republican system. So, while we enjoyed a life of independence and as an independent country, the fact of the matter is the days of independence, will forever be celebrated in our hearts and in our minds. And it must never be forgotten. However, the same point I raised about the youth, are we passing the days of independence and the ways of independence and doing business during that period for Barbados? Are we passing that down to the youth to allow for a continuation of it? And does it make sense to allow for the continuation of it if Barbados, not if, but Barbados was taken to a republic, and therefore we now have to build on the future, and the future represents a republic. So let us start to wrap our minds around fashioning this country as to what type of republic Barbados will be for the young people, for me, right? I see some young people out there doing great stuff. Thierry Gittings, Don Leacock, Nigel Franklin, William Chandler. Let me start calling names because too many names to call and I don't want to left on nobody. And the boy said, man, what you want to call me? Yeah. So all young people, all my friends, everybody, celebrate everybody. Right? But so what does the future republic look like for the young people of this country? So we must celebrate the old adages of the past. We must celebrate that period of independence. It must be celebrated and never forgotten. Right? However, we must not allow independence to become a skeleton in our closet, right? Where we can work the old errors, the old mistakes that were made during the governance and during the independence period 1966 to 2022. We can take all of the pitfalls, the downfalls, and refashion Barbados in a way that a new republic is governance by all, specifically focused on the people of the country and not corporate governance. So when I say that, then you have to focus on who you are electing, but we're not going there today. Right? So you want to face the realities of the past, right? And to recognize that we have been taken to a republic. We have gone there, and as far as I know, there won't be any going back to the good old days of independence. But we must continue to celebrate it. But I don't think we'll be going back. So we have to face that reality and plan for the future while still celebrating the past and paying respect to it. But this is a difficult conversation to have because independence for Barbados was indeed a time of honor, a time where many Barbadian, their parents who were working out in the fields were educated by the government and the system to today that they can be lawyers and doctors and business owners running corporations, running offices, leading countries, and giving the best of themselves regardless of which part of the globe they are. And that is what it meant to be a Barbadian during the period of independence. One of the most educated and intelligent people in the world using the education that was given to them by the state to help develop themselves on a personal individual level and to contribute and give back to their country. But what does it mean to be a Barbadian in this day and age under this new republic? That is the question that needs to be answered as we move forward and facing the reality of our past. I am excited for the future. I am excited for the future. So, I will cap off by taking one more quote from Dr. Lowe. Right. But before I do that, I just want to round up the quote on facing the realities of the past. And he's saying here that in facing the past, expect to come up against some very difficult moments. This is particularly true when the past is cluttered with painful memories and haunting experiences of personal failure, betrayal, loss, and sustained hardship. It can be very difficult to confront the past when there is uncertainty about how things will go once the confrontation with the past begins. So once we start to engage this process, some very harsh things needs to be said. Some very true things need to be said. And Barbados and the leadership of Barbados need to confront the atrocities that were imposed on its people and to develop a relationship to move forward, however, seeking an means with the people of this country as they need proper and adequate representation. So to end off alternate views tonight, we're going to say one thing from Dr. Lowe. And he says at page 284, dealing with regret. Alternate views has no regrets tonight. This is one of our better shows. And we want to round up by his quote, because we're soon coming up at our cutoff mark. We're 1 hour and 52 minutes in. And thank you very much for tuning in. Had a very, 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 very good show. So it says here, there will be times when upon reflection of the past, feelings of regret will emerge. These feelings grow from any number of acts of omission and or commission, the failure to make the decisions that should have been made, failure to take full advantage of opportunities, and refusing to give up the painful memories of the past. Among other things, will all induce feelings of regret once the process of putting the past behind has started. As long as there is a serious effort to unshackle our lives from the harmful trappings of the past, there will be the need to deal with feelings of regret. Why? Because once there has been an awakening to what the present and future hold in store for those who are willing to reject the false comforts and our confusion associated with the negative past, there will almost always emerge feelings of remorse and hurt. This is a natural occurrence that should be managed proactively, and if you need professional help, seek it before moving forward. The feeling of regret is a good feeling if it inspires a personal commit to correct the failures of the past. I'm going to repeat that part. The feeling of regret is a good feeling if it inspires a personal commitment to correct the failures of the past. If when it becomes if when it is that, sorry, confusing myself here. If when it is that being trapped in the past is the direct result of chronic denial or other personal failure, and an immediate effort is mobilized to put the past behind and get on with the task of living, then feeling regret has produced a profitable result. If, on the other hand, that feeling of regret is present, but we do nothing about changing those life patterns that resulted in being trapped in the past, then having feelings of regret will only prolong the guilt and shame that holds us to the past. And that is Dr. Denis Lowe, The Journey, The Path to Finding True Self Meaning. And there comes the end of our show tonight. I had a very good yes. Sorry, but I had a very good show. We got a note at the end. Your voice stayed up good tonight. Yeah, you almost got me at the end. So um, I had a very, very, very good show. To round up tonight, I want to leave you with this one. But thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're at the end of the show. And just going to leave you with one quote. And that is the law of national vision. A national vision is clear, a compelling mental portrait of the optimum the people of a region can contribute, achieve, and possess if they continue developing themselves and maximizing their resources, opportunities, and people. Vision is the birthplace of greatness and economic dignity. National greatness that cannot be seen cannot be achieved, and economic dignity that cannot be seen in the midst of poverty cannot be materialized. And the ability to see beyond what exists is what creates a visionary. Economic dignity is always led by economic visionaries who, like a sculptor, sees beyond the chunk of marble and sees within the marble the masterpieces about the sculpture. In the same way, successful, transformational, political visionaries sculpt economic dignity out of poverty and national greatness out of dependency. So, with that being said, I hope Barbados ascends to economic dignity and that the law of national vision applies to this country. I just want to thank you all for tuning in this evening as I pay my respects to Dr. Denis Lowe. I want to express my gratitude for him. As I say, we would have worked together before his passing. And I just want to say, sleep well in heaven, Dr. Denis Lowe. From Mr. Kimar Short, uh, we'll chat in due time. So thank you very much, alternate viewers. You're about 2 hours. Thank you very much. And here comes the end of our show. Tune in next week for alternate views. Next week, Thursday at 7 p.m. as we continue to bring the alternate view to you. So, my people, thank you very much. I will see seeing you uh, next week. So, thank you and goodbye.